Nobody, there's no car that's pulled out into the waiting area. Well, he was. We saw him getting his motorcade inside that site.
has not helped us with.
What's the most important message that you wanted to get across to him today with him visiting Houston? What's the most important message that you wanted to get across to him today with him visiting Houston?
My key message for the president, we're still recovering. This isn't over, and this isn't something that his administration can just turn the page on right now. There's a continued recovery process, and look, there are other issues that we're going to need to work with the federal government on. And so as he comes into office, I want to make sure he knows, whether it's transportation, whether it's flood control, or this recovery, that all of that is on his radar.
Judge, the president and the governor talked about the importance of protecting Texans who aren't covered by insurance, at emergency operations today. Any intelligence on just how...
We will continue Judge Hidalgo's comments on KHOU.com. They'll be streamed there if you would like to watch them. Meanwhile,
over 90,000 applications actually, and that's just the beginning. So mostly we expect those to be folks who are not insured. We believe there are a lot of challenges when we look at roughly our estimates from our engineering department and our city. We know we have a large low income and disparities population here in Harris County. So that's going to be big help. I'll tell you guys now, our county city fund has raised almost $5 million. So that's also going to go to folks who are not able to obtain support from other sources. But, just to have that unity between local, state, federal government in light of the disaster, on top of COVID and everything this community's been through, for us to be home to that symbolism, that show of unity, and the very real support that the White House is providing us, all of that is good news for Houston and for Harris County.
Judge, are you disappointed that Senator Cruz was not here today?
I'll just say I'm glad Senator Cornyn was. We had very productive conversations. I impressed upon him the need for the aid package to include local governments as the previous aid package did, because that's the way we're able to continue providing vaccines and clinics and doing the work we're doing. So I had that discussion with Senator Cornyn. As far as Senator Cruz, I'm just glad that Senator Cornyn was here.
If you had to describe President Biden's emotion and reaction to just being here today, how would you describe it?
He is just so compassionate. I saw him at the food bank. It was just a beautiful thing to see that he understands what we're going through, and he expressed that to me as well. Is he recognizes that he's not here to see a disaster that has passed, but a disaster that is still happening, and he recognizes the importance of that collaboration. Those are the key messages that I'm getting from him, and I think what we can take from that locally is that support and that commitment, that collaboration between us and the federal government is not going to go away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Testing 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. You guys good? You guys good over here? Testing 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2 1 2. You good? All right.
You all being very polite. You're with me all day, and it's dinner time. Good afternoon, or almost, actually, it's evening. And I want to thank you, Governor, Ms. Abbott, for your hospitality and your friendship. And Representative Senator Cornyn, I think he had to go back. I think he was getting on a plane. He told me he came in to see me last event. And Representatives
Joe Biden
came in to see me last event. And Representatives Shirley Jackson Lee, Al Green, Sylvia Garcia, Lizzie Pinelli, Pinell, and what am I doing here? I'm going to lose track here. And Mayor Turner, Judge Hidalgo, thank you all for welcoming us. And Jill and I wanted to visit Texas today for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, to let the people of Texas know our prayers are with you in the aftermath of this winter storm. And secondly, to let you know what I told Governor Abbott and Mayor Turner and Judge Hidalgo and the congressional delegation, that we will be true partners to help you recover and rebuild from the storms and this pandemic and the economic crisis. We're in for the long haul. Early today, we received an update on the storm relief efforts from Harris County at the Harris County Emergency Operations Center. Folks there are doing God's work, as my mother would say. It was an important update on how the federal government and the states are working together through the major disaster declaration and emergency declarations that I made after the storm hit when the governor contacted me. The Federal Emergency Management, FEMA, is providing millions of gallons of water and millions of meals and direct assistance to uninsured homeowners to repair the damage burst pipes caused to millions of homes across this state. The public assistance that comes with disaster declaration ensures that mayors and county officials can find shelter for folks in need and keep them safe and warm. This is in addition to the more than 125,000 blankets FEMA has also made available to storm victims so children and families don't go to sleep cold. FEMA, working with the Defense Logistics Agency and the Army Corps of Engineers from the Defense Department, has made generators and diesel fuel available to hospitals, nursing homes, and other critical facilities to keep the lights on and speed power restoration along its way. Many local military bases are helping in efforts to distribute water and food, fuel, and blankets all across this state. And I especially want to thank the service members for helping your fellow Americans in time of need. When we have a problem, we always call on the military, domestic or foreign, no matter what. You're best in the world. And I know millions of Texans have been impacted by the disruption of community water systems as a result of the power outages. The Environmental Protection Agency has deployed mobile drinking water labs in Houston, San Antonio, and Fort Worth to test water so we can get you get boil water advisories lifted and get safe drinking water flowing through those faucets again. There's more, but let me say this. We're not here today as Democrats or Republicans. We're here today as Americans. The American leaders with responsibility, all of us here in this parking lot, responsibility to all the people we serve. When a crisis hits our states, like the one that hit Texas, it's not a Republican or Democrat who's hurting. It's our fellow Americans who are hurting. And it's our job to help everyone in need. Look out for one another. Leave nobody behind. That's what we've seen today in our visit. After our briefing on the storm relief, we stopped by the Houston Food Bank. That's also doing God's work. Incredible operation. Just like everyone else here in the vaccination center. They've done thousands of people. It's making a fundamental difference in the safety and security of people. The more people get vaccinated, the faster we'll beat this pandemic. That's why one of my first steps and my first goals as president was to announce that I was going to get 100 million COVID vaccine shots administered in my first 100 days. Because of the people behind me and others, America is going to be the first in the country, perhaps the first in the world to get that done. And I'm proud to say we're halfway there, 50 million shots. Actually, I I was telling the congressman earlier, I carry a little card with me, and it lists every day the actual number of vaccines that have been administered. As of today, as of last night, 503,587. Every single one matters in just 37 days. The weeks ahead of schedule, we're weeks ahead of schedule. Even with setbacks from the winter storm, we're moving in the right direction. Look, in the last 6 weeks, we've gone from 6 million shots right before we took office in total to 12 million shots per week now. We've increased vaccine distribution by 70%. 60% of the people over the age of 75 have received at least one shot. Close to 50% of the people over the age of 65 got at least one shot. And you say, why am I focused on that? Well, it's especially important because people over the age of 65 account for 80% of all the COVID deaths. 80%. Roughly 75% of the people who live in long-term care facilities now have gotten their first dose, and those cases are at the lowest level since the reporting began back in May. We're making this progress because of all of you. The federal government and the states are working together, along with public and private partners. It starts with supply. We work with vaccine manufacturers, Pfizer and Moderna, to ensure we had enough supply to supply all adults in America by the end of July. And we discovered that vaccine manufacturers, though, weren't getting prioritized when it came to securing supplies they needed to fix their problem of not being able to go more rapidly. So I used the Defense Production Act to speed up the supply chain for key equipment that's already helped increase vaccine production. Last week, I toured the Pfizer vaccine manufacturing facility in Kalamazoo, Michigan. It's incredible. The precision, the safety, the pride, the sense of purpose, everyone involved in that facility. And we've all seen the news about Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Today is just the third safe, effective vaccine, and it's out. They've approved it today. We're going to use every conceivable way to expand manufacturing of the vaccine, the third vaccine, to make even more rapid progress in getting shots in people's arms. Here's what else we're doing. We're increasing the number of vaccinators. People putting the vaccine. One thing to have the vaccine, another thing to get in people's arms. We brought back retired doctors and nurses by executive order, allowed that to happen. We've already deployed more than 1,500 medical professionals. You see during the natural disasters from FEMA, our commissioned corps from the Department of Health and Human Services and the Defense Department, including the National Guard. And we're lining up thousands more. We're also setting up more places to get vaccinated. And today, as of today, we provided $3.8 billion to states, territories, and tribes to create hundreds of new vaccination centers and ramp up existing ones. We're providing personnel and equipment, and we're covering the cost for states, including the use of their National Guards. Here in Texas, it's meant millions of dollars and hundreds of vaccinators working in community vaccination centers and 3 mass vaccination centers in Arlington, Dallas, and right here in Houston and the other side here. To vaccinate thousands of Texans a day, tens of thousands overall. I want to show the American people the extraordinary effort being made and undertaken in the most difficult operational challenge this nation has ever faced logistically. It's remarkable. About 6,000 doses a day here. Folks who are eligible can call by phone, sign up online for an appointment, drive in, stay in their cars, get a shot, in and out in a very short amount of time. Requires massive logistical coordination and critical federal support from FEMA and the National Guard to work with cities and states and the Houston Texans stand up this kind of site. Vice President Harris and I did a virtual tour of a similar vaccination center in Arizona. One nurse there said, she talked about the shots, talking how many they were getting in people's arms, and she said she felt like she was administering, and get this, a dose of hope. A dose of hope. We're working with governors across the country to stand up and lend federal support to hundreds of vaccination centers, from stadiums like here to community centers to houses of worship large parking lots, delivery places, doses that hope we can get in people's arms as quickly as possible. I've also sent millions of vaccines to thousands of local pharmacies, over 7,000, to make it easier for folks to get the COVID-19 vaccine shot like they would a flu shot, because people are comfortable going to their local pharmacy. They go there for their flu shot. Everything else, they trust the pharmacist, and they're likely to go. Here in Texas, that includes 500 pharmacies across this state, like Walmart and CVS, including 50 pharmacies here in Houston. And for the folks who didn't live near a vaccination center or a pharmacy, we're deploying mobile clinics to go out to those neighborhoods and rural areas where people are unable to get to the centers. These are special vehicles of pop-up clinics that meet folks where they live and where they don't have the transportation to get the shots, which they'll be launching very soon here in Houston, those mobile units, as well as Dallas, Arlington, and across the state. We've also started to send vaccines directly to community health centers to help the hard-to-reach folks in cities, small towns, rural communities, in Black, Latino, and Native American communities that have higher rates of COVID-19 infections and deaths than any other groups. Here in Texas, we're already partnering with 12 community health centers in 10 cities, which have combined sites at over 100 locations across the entire state. We're going to save people's lives. As a result of these round-the-clock efforts, in 5 weeks, America's administered the most shots of any country in the world. That's great progress. It's also true that while COVID-19 vaccinations are up, COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations are down. But I need to be honest with you. I said from the beginning, like Roosevelt, who said, "I'll shoot you straight from the shoulder. You can handle anything as long as you're told the truth." Cases and hospitalizations could go back up as new variants emerge. And it's not the time to relax. We have to keep washing our hands, staying socially distanced, and for God's sake, wear your mask. Wear your mask. It's not a political statement. It's a patriotic thing to do. Some of our progress in this fight is because so many Americans are stepping up and doing these things. And the worst thing we could do now would be let our guard down. And here's another critical point. We're going to hit a phase in this effort, maybe late April, early May, when many predict there will be ramped up vaccine supply and we'll have administered shots to most of the people who really are eager to get them and to those who've been able to get there. But at the same time, the warning is there'll be people who live in hard-to-reach areas who can't get the shots, and there are folks who are hesitant to take the shots. We all know there's a history in this country of subjugating certain communities to terrible medical and scientific abuse. But if there's one message that needs to cut through all this, the vaccines are safe. I promise you, they are safe and effective. Listen to Dr. Fauci. Listen to the scientists who developed them through extensive and rigorous review. I did, and I took my shot publicly to demonstrate to the American people it's safe and effective. To address this challenge, we're going to launch a massive campaign to educate people about the vaccines, that they are safe and effective, and that they can go and get those shots and be good. And I'm going to close with this. This past year has been one of the most painful years in American history. As I said, we've lost over 500,000 lives of the virus. 500,000 moms and dads, husbands and wives, sons and daughters staring at an empty chair, the dining room table, the kitchen table, friends, neighbors, co-workers, and over the country, all over the country, where the loved ones who are gone. They're gone. Empty feeling in your chest, like you're being sucked into a black hole in your chest. But all over the country, where loved ones once sat, there's an empty chair. And folks, look, there's so much we can do. As you see the broken hearts and the families that have been left behind, there's nothing partisan about this virus. It's too long we've allowed the virus to divide us. I met today with Governor Abbott, Senator Cornyn, conservative Republicans. I'm a Democratic president. We disagree on plenty of things, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there are plenty of things we can work on together. And one of them is represented right here today, the effort to speed up vaccinations. We're not giving shots to Democrats or Republicans. I say it again, we're giving shots to Americans. And all across the country, we've got members of the armed forces, FEMA, volunteers, retirees, fellow Americans working around the clock to give these shots. And they're building on the work of scientists, researchers, doctors, and nurses. And my team at the White House, which is coordinating all of this, is first rate. None of this has a partisan tinge or a partisan element to it. This can be a great American achievement, being the only country in the world to reach 100 million shots in 100 days. This could unite us as a country to vaccinate America, to protect America, to heal America. And I know we can do this. Why? Because I know America can do great things when we do it together. I know my family spent a lot of time here in Houston, by the way, hey, John Eddie, how are you, buddy? I didn't see you there. And Houston, at MD Anderson, when our son Bo was being treated for glioblastoma before he passed away. Just yesterday, I saw MD Anderson announce they joined four other major cancer hospitals to help break down the silos that make real progress in this effort difficult. Now they're sharing data and information. That wasn't going on 4 or 5 years ago. We're going to beat cancer. I know we will. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There's just one thing I could be known for as president. I would be the president who, during his era, ended cancer as we know it. But then last week, guess what? We also landed a rover on Mars. We led by a NASA team in Pasadena, California. A rover carries instruments developed by a team here in Houston that'll be used in the mission of our time and our dreams. Imagine. Everybody's been so down the last number of years about what America, what can we do? We can do anything. American can do anything. And now we see the images that are truly stunning. Battling COVID, beating cancer, going to Mars. If there's one thing I know about America, it's this. Americans never give up. They never give in. They never cry uncle. They just struggle, innovate, and they preserve and persevere. We're going to get through all of this, I promise you. And we're going to do it together. Together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. You're the best. We can do all this, guys, I promise you. We can do this. Nobody in the world can compete with us when we're together. Thank you all so very much.
President Joe Biden speaking live from the FEMA vaccination site at NRG Park about the national COVID response, including the FEMA site here in Houston that he's speaking from, a site he described as remarkable with its ability to vaccinate up to 6,000 people a day.
Our Grace White is there at NRG with more on the president's final stop in Houston. Grace?
Lenamia, President Joe Biden just wrapped his about 20-minute speech here at NRG in the parking lot just outside the FEMA mass vaccination site that he says has been vaccinating 6,000 people a day. He talked, though, first about the winter storm, saying he wants Texans to know that he cares and is paying attention to what's happening here in Texas. Here's what he said just a few minutes ago. The president talked about God's work being done not only at the Harris County Emergency Operations Center where he stopped today, but also the Houston Food Bank. He and the First Lady got to tour inside there, speak to volunteers. He called it God's work there today. He also talked about his disaster declaration for the state of Texas, saying that FEMA has deployed blankets to families who were in need of shelter during the cold. He also talked about generators being made available to hospitals and thanked the military for distributing food and water throughout the state of Texas. He ended by talking, though, about the vaccine, saying that everyone needs to realize this is not a political issue. He says he and his administration are getting vaccine updates daily. He says he has a list that he likes to know exactly how many people have been vaccinated every day. He mentioned the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. It was just approved today. He said they will be increasing the number of vaccinators, bringing more doctors out of retirement. He also talked about using stadiums and churches, turning them into vaccination sites. But his final message here, the vaccine was safe, it's not political, and he wants to work with people across party lines. Len and Mia, back to you.
All right, Grace, thank you so much. At NRG Park, the site of the president's final visit today, as we take another look at him greeting with some of the folks who showed up there to listen to his 20-minute speech that ended just moments ago that Grace was talking about. Again, talking about what Americans can do once we put our mind to it, despite all the struggles that we have been through, especially in the past year with this pandemic, and of course now here in Texas with this massive power outage and all the fallout from the winter storm that we are dealing with. So he visited, as we just mentioned, the Houston Food Bank earlier today, as well as Houston TranStar, the Office of Emergency Management. The president actually a little bit ahead of schedule. He was supposed to speak at about 5. He ended up going at about 10 to 5 and wrapping up about 10 minutes after, as we say, him starting to walk away there.
Schedule or right on schedule. We know that the president plans to depart the city of Houston close to the 6 o'clock hour, and seeing now that that is less than an hour away and they have to get to Ellington here at this hour. Of course, the presidential motorcade, it won't take hardly any time, but the president really taking all of this in at NRG Park, where it is the site of the FEMA mass vaccination site that just rolled out earlier this week. A soft opening the first day of the week, and Tuesday fully vaccinating people there. The president taking note of the operations, just how smooth things are going there, praising the people responsible while also not wanting to disrupt the work that's being done there. Work he described as, quote, God's work at the FEMA vaccination site, just as much as the work that's taking place at the Houston Food Bank. The president spending a great deal of time there earlier today. Spending even more time was, of course, First Lady Jill Biden, who rolled up her sleeves and got to work. But right now the focus is on NRG Park and the FEMA mass vaccination site. Here you can see to the right of your screen some of our local leaders, as well as Congress members, Judge Lina Hidalgo there as well. So this is the live scene right now as the president just wrapped up with his remarks at NRG. Our coverage here continues.
And right now, as you mentioned, Mia, the president will be leaving here shortly, NRG Park, which is, of course, where the stadium is, right there at Kirby and the South Loop. He'll be then going south to Ellington, and that means a traffic problem for some folks during rush hour. Stephanie Simmons looks at the traffic issues.
Well, President Biden and the First Lady have already had a very, very busy schedule here in the city of Houston, and we can tell you it's going to be busy out there on the freeways because of their visit as they depart. So let's take a look at what you could see as they depart NRG and head back to Ellington Field to be on their way. I'm almost certain the route they will take, even though they don't disclose the exact route for security purposes. This South Loop, they'll most likely shut down both directions for security once again to the Gulf Freeway. So just avoid the area. Don't even take an alternate route because you never know, they could shut down the feeder as well. Be safe out there and just be aware of this route.
Good to know, Steph. Thanks. President Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden both visited the Houston Food Bank today, as we've been telling you. The food bank has become an incredible resource over the past year because of COVID-19, and now last week's winter storm compounding matters. Melissa Correa went along for part of that presidential tour today. Mel, do you know what questions the Bidens asked?
Well, hey there, Mia. Had to tap into the tour guides who spoke directly to the Bidens, and they're telling me that both the president and the First Lady wanted to know specifically how hunger is impacting Houston area children and the elderly. President Biden then followed up with questions on how the federal government can better help food banks all across the country. The Houston Food Bank specifically is the place to ask all of those questions. This is the biggest food bank in America, distributing at least 800,000 pounds of food per day day during this pandemic. Dr. Jill Biden teamed with the First Lady of Texas and Houston area educators to pack meals for children through the Buddy Backpack program. The First Lady really chatted it up with Kara Peck. She's an administrator within Humble ISD because Peck's campus benefits from that program. The First Lady also packed food boxes for senior citizens who live on a fixed income. President Biden spent time talking with volunteers. At one point, he found a pair of siblings, a little girl and a little boy, who talked to the president about why they volunteer here. They gave the president a hug goodbye at the end of their conversation, and we're told that the president also spoke to a female volunteer about his son Bo, who lost his battle with cancer. President Biden described the Houston Food Bank as incredible and absolutely amazing, while adding we could do so much more. And talk about it, really. The Houston Food Bank cranked out more than 100 million meals last year. KHOU, we've taken viewers inside the Houston Food Bank over the last decade or so, and so the enormity of this operation, we may just be used to it. It's been impressive, me and Len, looking at the White House pool notes, you know, the press team that goes inside of these places where the president tours, the national media describing this place as a Costco on steroids. And so the hope is that by spotlighting the Houston Food Bank, more donations and more help continue to arrive on Houston's doorstep. Guys,
they're going to need it 800,000 pounds to 1 million pounds of food a day. Melissa Correa, thank you.
President Biden starting his day in the city at Harris County's Emergency Operations Center. Got a briefing from top leaders about the winter storm, the aftermath, and now the recovery. Adam Bennett has been there all day. Adam, I know he talked about an hour with the top state and local emergency officials today.
That's right, Len. You know, this was command central during the winter storm last week, as it has been during so many other disasters here. And today, the president really just spent a lot of time listening to the challenges that the state is still facing, even though the cold temperatures are long gone. The motorcade rolled up about 1 this afternoon and then went straight to the back of the building. A short time later, Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo then greeted President Biden and thanked him. The president called the EOC, quote, hell of an operation and probably the best one in the country. The president also said, quote, you're saving people's lives and doing God's work. He then heard from state and local emergency management leaders on the challenges.
10,400 individuals have reported their homes had broken pipes, and they're still working on that today. We still have multiple water utility districts that are still repairing their systems today, and 57,000 residents still have to boil their water.
And the state's top emergency management coordinator told President Biden that Texas has given out more than 12 million bottles of water so far. He also told the president that a lot of families, businesses, and schools.
He's promising that they'll be even more responsive and pretty much showed a lot of empathy for a lot of Texans who still find themselves in homes without water, needing a lot of federal assistance. So it was a very good trip.
A lot of the speech was just about the COVID vaccine and kind of the national outlook on things. Do you wish more had been said about Texas in last week's winter storm?
Well, you know, he's been hearing about that all day. You know, we didn't quite know how long he was going to speak today, but I can assure you throughout the day, from the stop first at Transtar, and that was primarily about the winter storm. You know, the governor met with him, you know, privately, and then he came out into the open, and we talked quite a bit about the number of people who are still without power, still without water, and the number of people who need the financial assistance. So the visit at Transtar was very much about last week, the winter storm. And then, of course, leaving there, went to the food bank and recognizing there are tremendous food insecurities, much of which is related to the storm. And then even with the heartbreaks that the coronavirus have inflicted on a lot of people. So that was at the Houston Food Bank, and that was a very good tour and a very good meeting. And then, of course, now we are here at NRG, and the focus, of course, on the FEMA site, not just here, but the site in mass vaccination site in Dallas as well as Arlington. So it kind of covered the whole gamut. Okay, with all of the different stops and the conversation that took place at each one of those stops.
Mayor, did you ask the president for anything specific? Are there any
Well, basically, again, you know, we talked about the lack of supplies, plumbing supplies, materials, licensed plumbers. We also indicated, you know, people are wanting they're needing the help, even though he signed the disaster declaration. It's the speed in which those dollars can flow. Those grant dollars, the small business loans, the heads of FEMA were here. And they're already pushing dollars out to people, not only in the city of Houston, Harris County, but throughout the state. So that's good news. And so he did indicate about making sure that FEMA move as quickly as possible to meet people's immediate needs as soon as possible.
Mayor, as far as the immediate needs are concerned, today it was announced that FEMA has spent some $9 million on the individual assistance
Yes.
going directly to people statewide. What do you say to those Houstonians who are in primarily apartment complexes? A lot of them don't have that that water, in terms of the trickle down of help getting to them and the timeline that's uncertain.
And what I would say to them, we're trying to approach it on multiple levels. Of course, with the assistance that's coming from FEMA is one way of getting assistance. And for some who are not a part of that $9 million, but hopefully more dollars will be pushed out as quickly as possible. The other is the relief fund that the city and the county have put together, the Greater Houston Relief Fund. In fact, there was a board meeting, I believe, this morning on the relief fund. And the goal is to start pushing dollars out from the relief fund, if not today, as of Monday. So dollars will start to flow. And we're working in collaboration with the Greater Houston Community Foundation as well as with United Way. So there are multiple ways. And then there are different organizations that are in town, nonprofits, that I've talked to, Samaritan, I can't think of the full name, but they're in town right now and they're assisting people in terms of repairing their pipes and repairing their homes. So there are multiple nonprofits that are in the city. You've got the relief fund that is intended to provide assistance, financial assistance, sooner rather than later. And then you've got the monies coming from FEMA. So there are multiple ways that people can get assistance.
About power, Mr. Mayor, the president has said that he would not criticize the state's power system, its own grid. What are your thoughts on the conversation that's been had today as far as those questions are concerned? What happens next with how we handle power here in the state of Texas?
Well, you know, that's
Should there be more federal input?
Well, I think there needs to be input not only from the federal level, but of course, you know, the state is doing this review. You know, I listened to a lot of those hearings that took place on yesterday. I thought there were some substantive hearings that are taking place in the legislative process. But there needs to be some conversations from multiple levels. The reality is that the system did fail. Okay, it did fail. And it was system-wide state failure. And much of what took place last week was foreseeable and preventable. Nothing that took place last week was of any surprise. We knew that there was not enough reserves to prevent blackouts. We knew that in the state of Texas you have a closed grid. Okay, ERCOT provides power to 90% of the geographical area of Texas. We knew it's a closed grid, and if you don't have reserve power, and because the grid is closed, you can't pull power from the west or from the east. Those are things we knew. And we knew that it's a market-driven system, which means that when the demand exceeds the supply, the power generators are able to charge exponentially more, from a few thousand per megawatt to up to 9,000. All of those things we knew. And we knew that the system was not weatherized. But what people were betting on is that the system that's designed for summer heat would not need to be designed and weatherized for a major winter storm. And they guessed wrong, and they missed, and a lot of people have suffered.
Real quick, what was your main message for the president?
Is that we need a partner all the way through, a good partner. And that I'm very sensitive to people who don't have the insurance and don't have the financial means, and really needing those federal dollars sooner rather than later. People who can't afford to leave their homes because they don't have running water because the pipes have burst, they can't afford to go to a hotel. And so we're doing as much as we can locally, but we really do need a federal partner. And he was very empathetic to it. And they have already done some very important things, and we wanted to thank him for the support that the state of Texas.
Thank you, guys.
The in my hat now.
Have any moves with that or no? You good?
Well, you know. Man, I can't save it all. Look, even though the Houston High showing the spirit of the rodeo remains the same. So I'm encouraging people to do their part to keep the spirit of the rodeo alive until such time